Good morning, Brew Daily show. I'm Neal Freyman.
And I'm Toby Howell.
Today, why securing Venezuela's oil supply won't be easy.
Then California has a new tax up its sleeve, and its billionaires are throwing a fit. It's Monday, January 5th. Let's ride.
Good morning. Welcome back and Happy New Year. Can I say that? Either way, it's great to be in your ears once again after the holiday break, and Toby and I are super excited for what 2026 has in store. Before we get into the news, Toby, I'm going to need a couple things from you to help us learn about your time off. Tell us the best thing you ate, the best thing you watched, and the best thing you read.
Ate, watch, read. Okay, got it. Best thing I ate, I made these carrot cinnamon rolls from Maddie Matheson. Absolutely delicious. Doesn't sound delicious, but carrots kind of mellow the sweetness, which is a great thing when it comes to cinnamon rolls. The best thing I watched, I did my duty. I watched Marty Supreme, but that was not the top. I have to go with Heated Rivalry, which is about two hockey rivals who become, let's say, more than friends. It is very intense. That is all I'll say. Actually, that is not all I'll say. Do not watch this with your parents is my final warning. And then finally for reading, I'm hitting the classics this year. I'm 100 pages into The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. It is thick.
It's thick.
It is thick. So I'm doing my best there.
I said I would pay you $100 if you actually finish that book. I'll go quickly. The best thing I ate while I was in Oaxaca, Mexico, and when you're there, you just have to eat mole for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it is so delicious. So I am 90% mole, and the other 10% I am mezcal. I highly recommend people go there. Watch, I am kind of on an Alfonso Cuarón kick. He's a Mexican filmmaker, so I watched Y Tu Mama Tambien and Children of Men, two excellent films. Also, don't watch Y Tu Mama Tambien with your parents. After he did that movie, the next movie he did actually was The Prisoner of Azkaban, kind of a different tonal shift. And the best thing I read was The Loneliness of Sonia and Sonny, which is another thick book. It's 670 pages, but I did finish it. It just came out in the past year, and it's an excellent book.
People weigh in. Who had a more cultured break? Me, cinnamon rolls, or Neal with mole in Oaxaca? I think we both did pretty well. And now a word from our sponsor, Rubrik. Neal, AI agents are kind of like that friend who hits a golf ball like they are making a case for a spot at the U.S. Open. Powerful, unpredictable, and occasionally just launching things where they don't belong.
Hello, Sandtrap. And that's why Rubrik Agent Cloud is such a game changer. It's the only platform that lets you monitor, govern, and rewind AI agent actions so they don't smack sensitive data into the parking lot.
It's constantly watching in the background, giving you full visibility, enforceable guardrails, real risk scoring, and a rewind that fixes mistakes in minutes.
Hospitals and banks rely on it because they can't afford rogue AI drives. Using Rubrik Agent Cloud has made people way less nervous about letting AI agents actually do things.
If your business relies on AI agents, you need the ability to monitor, govern, and rewind their actions. Right now, our listeners get exclusive early access to Rubrik Agent Cloud. Head to Rubrik.com. That's Rubrik.com. Rubrik.com.
Well, the news cycle did not ease its way into 2026 as the new year kicked off with the U.S. attempting regime change in Venezuela, and oil is at the center of this stunning story. Early Saturday morning, U.S. military forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife in a wide-scale raid that took months of planning. They now face drug trafficking charges while being held in the same notorious Brooklyn jail that housed Diddy and SBF. Venezuela's leftist vice president and Maduro ally, Delcy Rodriguez, is now serving as the country's de facto leader as everyone around the world watches, with great uncertainty, what happens next. For President Trump, what comes next is a large-scale oil extraction by American companies. In a press conference on Saturday, Trump said, "We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure." Venezuela's oil infrastructure is indeed badly broken. It sits on the largest proven oil reserves anywhere on the globe, 303 billion barrels worth, or 17% of the world's total. However, years of neglect and mismanagement have led Venezuela to eke out just 800,000 barrels per day. Compare that to the 13.8 million barrels per day produced by the United States. Most Western oil companies, except for Chevron, do not operate in Venezuela after waves of nationalization booted them out of the country, most recently in 2007. Trump is making taking a bold gamble, and many say an illegal one. They'll return now that Maduro has been ousted, but tapping this gold mine will not be easy or simple.
You are right, Neal. We did not ease into this news cycle at all. I remember messaging you on the weekend when this news broke that we're going to have something to talk about on Monday. So let's talk about it. Venezuela does depend on oil tankers to get their oil out into the world. And right now there is, in addition to, seizing Maduro, the U.S. is blocking 30 tankers from kind of delivering oil, which has a crippling fiscal impact on Venezuela's economy. And Marco Rubio says that is actually the lever that the U.S. is putting pressure on Venezuela right now. His quote was that it allows us to exert tremendous leverage over what happens next in the nation. So rather than taking control of the country outright, like Trump has suggested, it does look like this oil quarantine is going to be the chief way that the U.S., kind of pushes Venezuela to its will. That being said, what is going to happen to the global oil market? We know this is going to affect Venezuela's oil market, but the blockade is not necessarily expected to adversely affect the global market as much as you might expect. Around 80% of Venezuela's oil is actually sold on the black market, so it's not a massive contributor to the market as a whole. China and Russia are its biggest customers, but China can kind of replace Venezuela's barrels pretty easily, so it will devastate the Venezuelan economy, but right now, oil market experts are kind of looking at it and saying it's not going to be this massive supply hit that you might expect.
But Trump has grander designs for American oil companies to go in back to Venezuela, where they operated for many decades before they were kicked out during these waves of nationalization in the 70s and 90s. Companies like Exxon and Mobil before they were merged, and Gulf Oil and Conoco, they all had huge presences as in Venezuela when Venezuela was in a huge oil powerhouse on the global stage. It was actually one of the richest countries in the world from the 50s to the 80s because of it was one of the biggest oil exporters on the planet. Certain governments came in and created nationalization for this industry, and that led to years of neglect and corruption, and now Venezuela just produces 1% of all global oil exports. President Trump wants American companies to go back in there and claim what they say were seized assets. A bunch of these oil companies, after this nationalization, actually sued Venezuela for tens of billions of dollars. They say that they were paid pennies on the dollar for what they were owed. So Trump says, let's go back in, Exxon, Mobil, and others, and Chevron is already operating there, and let's take more of the oil. And that seems to be at least part of parcel of what this stunning raid was meant to achieve.
There is some kind of ironic tension underneath this approach, though, because let's look at the state of oil prices. They fell 20% in 2025. Right now, oil is trading around, $57 a barrel, which is a kind of a warning or a yellow warning light for domestic oil producers. It is not necessarily a price that they can sell oil very profitably at. And so the market has been dealing with this supply glut. There's tankers, they're just sitting full of oil with not a lot of willing buyers. And so Trump is saying, hey, we want to actually start bringing online more oil capacity, where we want to drill in another country now. Is that necessarily what the oil market wants? That would just put more supply onto the market. So there is a little bit of a head scratching here, but I looked at how oil companies are trading this morning after the news. Valero is up 8% in pre-market. Chevron is up over 7%. So I do think there is some investor curiosity on whether they will get access to this valuable market once again.
Yeah, most experts looked at what's going on and said, I don't think that American oil companies are going to be jumping to go back into Venezuela. Number one, because of where oil prices are and because of the glut of oil. The other is just the amount of capital that is going to be needed to repair this dilapidated infrastructure. Some estimates, Rystad Energy, a consultancy, said that $110 billion in capital expenditure in exploration and production alone would be needed to bring Venezuela's output back to where it was just 15 years ago, $110 billion. And then there's the facet of human capital. So many of engineers and other talented people in the oil industry in Venezuela have left in recent years because this industry has gone to shambles. So you need a lot of know-how and logistics that need to be repaired in the coming years to actually make Venezuela a significant player on the oil stage, which seems to be a far-fetched, especially at oil prices below the Mendoza line right now at $60. So So a huge question mark about what is going to be happening in Venezuela. It looks like the regime is still in place because Maduro's number 2 is still in charge. We don't know what's going to happen, but we will keep you updated.
Let's move on. California wants to take some of its wealthiest residents' lunch money, and they are not happy. A one-time 5% wealth tax has been proposed on California's estimated 255 billionaires. Notice I said wealth, not income. That means the tax, which still doesn't have the necessary signatures yet to appear on the November ballot, doesn't just apply to the bacon the ultra-rich are bringing home, but also the worth of their businesses, stocks, bonds, art, collectibles, and intellectual property. How many gitas would a tax like this raise? While it's difficult to determine exact revenue, the healthcare union that crafted the measure estimates that it would raise up to $100 billion. But that's a big if, because billionaires may change their behavior to reduce exposure, and much of their wealth is tied to stock prices, which fluctuate, making it hard to pin down an exact number. The idea behind the one-time ding is to reallocate some of the billions to areas where people are struggling, namely healthcare. 90% of the revenue generated by the tax would go towards healthcare, with the remaining 10% spread to food assistance and education. The policy is being framed as a response to Republicans' big, beautiful bill tax and spending law, which includes around $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts over the next 10 years. Neal, there is a big debate here, though. Are billionaires just gonna leave if you hit them with a tax like this?
Well, what's interesting about this thing is that it would retroactively apply to billionaires living in California on January 1st, 2026, even if it is approved on the ballot in November 2026. So you had all of these billionaires, according to reports, trying to establish residency outside of California in the last few days of December. Peter Thiel, who has a lot of things going on in Los Angeles, said he opened, or reports show that he opened an office in Miami. David Sachs, who is now in the Trump administration, also an investor, opened an office in Texas. Larry Page, the Google co-founder, is another one of those big billionaire names that is trying to diversify their assets abroad so they're not hit with this one-time tax in California if this ballot measure is approved in November. So you saw a huge scramble by billionaires to try to mitigate their tax incidence if this ballot measure would be approved later this year. And there was an equal number of billionaires upset online going after California legislators, especially Ro Khanna, who is the representative of Silicon Valley. They got into a huge spat on X over this particular bill. And there is a huge question of whether billionaires will actually leave as they say they will because of this this tax.
Yeah, let's dive into the core debate. Supporters of the tax say that, hey, billionaire wealth has nearly tripled in the last 6 years. They can afford the 5% hit to their top line. It's not going to affect their lifestyle. It's not going to affect their consumption or spending. It really is a small amount when you think about how much their wealth has grown in recent times. But critics' arguments say that, hey, you're risk losing your highest tax base if you start pushing these people to other states, because wealthy residents could hypothetically just pack up and leave, as you explained with a lot of Silicon Valley high-profile people. Gavin Newsom, the governor, has said he's previously opposed wealth taxes for much of those same reasons. But if you actually dig into some policies that have happened in other states, maybe they wouldn't abscond like a lot of people are fearing. Prior studies have showed that millionaires don't typically relocate just for tax cuts. Massachusetts introduced a 4% tax on millionaires in 2023. The millionaire population rose nearly 39% in the 2 years after it was enacted. So just plain and simple, there are a long list of reasons why you live in the place that you live. I mean,
and California has nicer weather than Massachusetts.
It is a lot nicer weather. It's got better sports teams too, actually. But the bottom line is high wealth individuals are less likely to move for tax reasons than maybe you would expect.
Welcome to Winner of the Weekend, the segment where Toby and I pick two things that are having more fun than Hollander and Rosenoff in the locker room. I win the pre-show contest of who has more chapped lips, so I get to go first. And my winner is the stock market, which swatted away tariffs, bubble fears, and economic gloom to record another fantastic year. With 2025 now in the books, the S&P rose 16 18%, the NASDAQ 20%, and the Dow 13%, setting more record highs along the way. That makes 3 consecutive years of double-digit gains for stocks, and the 6th year out of 7 that the S&P has climbed at least 15%. This long, extended rally continues to be fueled by AI companies, which investors believe are ushering in the next industrial revolution. By one estimate, more than 90% of U.S. economic growth in the first half of 2025 was accounted for by investments in computer equipment and software tied to AI and data centers. And that lined the pockets of shareholders in those firms. 7 of the 10 best performing S&P stocks last year were tied to the euphoria around AI. What will 2026 bring? Even more gains, analysts predict. The average S&P 500 target for the year is about 7,600 points, implying a jump of 11%. That's a reflection of more AI advances, as well as the Fed continuing to cut rates 2 to 3 times next year, lowering borrowing costs across the economy. Toby, it's a bull's market. We're just living in it.
Let's rewind to ourselves at this point last year. Analysts were actually expecting pretty steady market gains. They were expecting interest rates cuts, and they were expecting a business-friendly environment under President Trump. Technically, we did get to that end result, a great year for stocks, but along the way, it was anything but smooth. I do just want to go kind of Spotify wrapped the stock market and relive the year that was. Inflation pressures were still kind of mingling around in early 2025. Then DeepSeek happened, which was this moment where Chinese AI company developed technology at a much lower cost than U.S. firms. That caused a massive panic. Then there was the tariff shocks that happened in April. The S&P 500 plunged more than 12% in 1 week. Like, it is crazy saying that sentence now after ending the year up over 16%. And then throughout the year too, there was just, corporate profit damage. There was consumer harm that happened from these tariffs. All these policies were very unpredictable. And then May through October kind of started to heat up a little bit. Tariff were delayed a little bit. The Federal Reserve did come through with those rate cuts that a lot of people were expecting. And then obviously the AI trade just powered the market through it all. And the S&P 500 hit record highs every month from May through October, while it just ignored all the previous fears that surfaced in the beginning of the year. So yes, we got there in the end, but along the way, it was a bumpy ride for sure. All right, we're going to take a quick break and come back with my winner of the weekend. My winner of the weekend is eating your words, because Elon Musk is sitting down to an all-you-can-eat buffet now that Chinese EV maker BYD has overtaken Tesla as the world's largest seller of electric vehicles. Let's rewind to 2011. Elon publicly dismissed BYD as a serious competitor, saying, "Have you seen their car? I don't think it's particularly attractive. The technology is not very strong." Well, like Neal post high school, it's had a bit of a glow up since, and customers have taken notice. 2025 was the year that Tesla fully lost its EV crown, for the first time selling fewer EVs over a full year than BYD. Tesla delivered 1.64 million vehicles in 2025, down from nearly 1.8 million in 2024. That's a 9% year-over-year decline for a company that used to put up 50% growth. Meanwhile, BYD sold 2.26 million electric cars globally in 2025, up 28% from the year prior. Even more impressive, BYD has done this without you likely having driven or even seen one on US roads. Chinese EVs remain effectively banned from the US due to high tariffs, which means it's been beating Tesla with one red, white, and blue hand behind its back. Ironically, given Elon's talk back in 2011, BYD could probably lob much of the same criticism back at Tesla these days. Tesla has not substantially updated its lineup in years, and the only major new model it did unveil, the Cybertruck, has sold poorly. Throw in Musk's politics that have damaged Tesla's brand among core EV consumers, and you have a recipe for losing your throne. Neal, BYD was a big winner of 2025.
Let's talk about where Tesla and BYD do go head-to-head, which is battleground Europe. And that's where you can see this changing of the guard really take place. Tesla's European registrations last year fell 39%, while BYD's registrations rose 240%. In Europe, Tesla now sells fewer electric cars than Volkswagen. So we know that BYD can't really sell cars in the United States. So that is kind of where the red, white, and blue, and the red and white, or just the red, do meet, and they clash in Europe. And it looks like BYD is winning that war there, as it is around the world.
The story every time we talk about Tesla is we have to say, like, well, they're not actually an electric vehicle company anymore. Wall Street doesn't value it like an AV company anymore. They're very much focused on this robo-taxi-enabled future, about their Optimus robots. It's very much an AI and robotics company, but it still does have a hefty electric vehicle business, and it is not just symbolic that BYD trounced it. It wasn't even close, by the way. BYD had beat Tesla over some quarters when it comes to electric vehicle sales, but seeing it put year against year and seeing BYD just absolutely lap it, the core business of Tesla is no longer, the behemoth that many expected it to be. I remember back in the day, Elon was talking about selling 20 million EVs a year, which is, more than Toyota did. Now that is far from the top of mind. It's all about robotics and AI.
Yeah, they peaked at 1.8 million vehicles sold. And then for the past 2 years, that's actually declined. Yes, 3/4 of Tesla's revenue does come from their EV business, but shareholders are looking way past that into this robotics and autonomous vehicle future. Now, Elon Musk and Tesla do have a robo-taxi service operating in Austin, Texas, and in the Bay Area, and they're hoping to expand that in this new year, and Tesla stock will absolutely be riding on how that goes. All right, folks, it's here. Your preview of the first week of the year. Wish I didn't have to do this, but let's dive in. Silicon Valley is in Sin City for the world's biggest consumer electronics show, CES. Held in Las Vegas every January, CES gives companies the opportunity to show off futuristic gadgets that infuse the latest technology, even if it may not be totally ready for prime time. The main theme of this year's event: robots, from pool cleaners to lawnmowers to humanoids that will fold your laundry. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang and AMD's Lisa Su will kick off the festivities with big speeches today.
I was looking at some of the robots teased so far, and one from LG gives me hope that our laundry folding days actually could be coming to an end. It syncs with your smart appliances that do have to be LG to load and start cycles and then fold when they're done. So I do think that kind of cohesive ecosystem could work. I also saw a bunch of really bad folding laundry robots, so it really depends. I'm just looking.
The bar to clear is very low. I think an abacus could fold laundry better than I, Dan.
I need it though. I'm so over. I came back from our travels, and it took so long to do all this laundry. I just am looking at these robots and going, come on, you can do it, LG. I believe in you.
All right, we'll definitely bring you updates from CES about those laundry folding robots. Economic data releases have returned mostly back to normal after the disruptions from the shutdown, which means this Friday we'll get the jobs report for December, presenting the employment situation not only for that month, but for the entire year of 2025. In case you forgot what happened in November, the U.S. added 64,000 jobs, better than expected, but the unemployment rate rose to 4.6%, the highest in over 4 years.
I don't even really remember what it's like having regular jobs reports coming in after the end of last year with the government shutdown. So it's good to have you back, friend. That's all I'll say.
Mr. Beast is coming back to television for the second season of Beast Games, his hit game show for Amazon. In 2024, the world's biggest YouTuber made a highly successful transition to traditional entertainment, with the first season becoming Prime Video's most watched unscripted show of all time, reaching 50 million viewers in the first 25 days it streamed. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein was so impressed that he even gave Beast Games a $15 million grant to film the second season in the state.
I watched the first season.
A lot of people did.
Yeah, 50 million people did. I would say it's a cross between The Wire and The Soprano in terms of plot and just drama and quality. It is entertaining. And if you're literally looking for just an injection of sheer mindless entertainment, turn on Beast Games, I guess.
All right, college football's marathon of a playoff will take 2 steps closer to handing out the trophy, with semifinal games determining the national championship matchup. This year has seen a stunning changing of the guard, with a new crop of gridiron empires vanquishing the old. Indiana and Oregon, who play each other on Friday, have never won a national title, while it's been decades for Ole Miss and Miami, who square off on Thursday.
My fun fact here is that every coach remaining is one who was on Nick Saban's staff at one point or another. That is a fruitful coaching tree. That is a coaching redwood. I want to imagine Nick Saban goes into a group chat with all four of them and goes, you know who my favorite is. Like, I'm rooting for you, and you just don't say anything like that. You could do some mind games, which I assume, Coach Saban would do.
And then finally, this week's also the first full one for Dry January, an increasingly popular tradition where people lay off the booze for the entire month. In 2024, according to a poll from Civic Science, a quarter of adult Americans reported that they successfully completed Dry January, and it might be getting even easier given the decline in drinking rates. Gallup found that just 54% of Americans said they drank alcohol last year, an all-time low dating back to 1939. Toby, you going dry this month?
I am dry as a bone. I just have a lot going on, Neal. I'm trying to read Brother Carr, whatever. I can't even pronounce it right now. I'm trying to get back in marathon shape, maintain the golf game. We're on the road to 225 on bench, so no time for drinking this January.
I am. I want to support local bars. They're going to have a rough go out of it this month, so I'm going to go pop my head and say hi.
Support local businesses.
I'm not sure anybody else is going to be there. A lot of people do Dry January, and good luck with it if you are doing it. All right, that is all the time we have. Thanks for starting your morning with us, and have a wonderful start to the week. If you want to get in touch, you can send a note to Morning Brew Daily at morningbrew.com or DM us on Instagram at MB Daily Show. Let's roll the credits. Emily Milliron is our executive producer. Raymond Liu is our producer. Our associate producers are Olivia Graham and Olivia Lake. Hair and Makeup still has the Sunday Scaries. Devin Emery is our president, and our show is a production of Morning Brew.
Great show today, Neal. Let's run it back tomorrow.